Hello, I'm Chris Flisher, and welcome to Turning of the Wheel, an intelligent, lively discussion on astrology, art, and adventure. Timing is everything, and as the great wheel turns, we are best prepared when we are best informed. Join me as I explore the current planetary alignments and offer insights for coping with change. Educational, informative, enlightening, the Turning of the Wheel is a welcome pause in your daily swirl of constant change. Through intelligent discourse, inspired guests, and educational segments, I will help to enlighten your knowledge of astrology and guide you to accept change as the great wheel of life turns. Call in with your questions and speak with some of the greatest visionaries in the time-tested practice of astrology. Turning of the Wheel, Astrology, Art, and Adventure with Chris Flisher each week on Turning of the Wheel podcast. Okay, hello, welcome to Turning of the Wheel. My name is Chris Flisher. As you know, this is a show about astrology. And we are living in very intense times right now, as we all know, as we scour the web and we see what's going on. We watch the headlines float by. We can see we are in a time of enormous change and turmoil, which can be a little bit off-putting for many of us, especially if you know where it is in your own personal charts. But also, it also gives rise to the idea of how we manage this and how we get through this. And I always think that the better off we are informed, the better off we can prepare for what's about to come our way. I got a great guest coming on. You all know him very well, Michael Lutin. He'll be on in a few seconds here. I just want to make a few quick announcements. Before I go, I want to remind you all to sign up for my newsletter from my website, chrisflisher.com or turningofthewheel.com. And you can get my newsletter. It comes out every Sunday afternoon. And in there, you'll get a couple of paragraphs of mundane astrology, as well as the individual signs, and then links to podcasts and anything else that I might have going on. So before we get any further on the road of astrology, it is my great delight to have Michael Lutin here today. He's an old friend of mine from New York City, and we're going to be talking about the nodes and where they are in the chart today for the United States, especially since they're bumping up against Saturn and Pluto. And we have a lot to talk about there. So Michael, welcome to the show today. It's always great to have you on.
Nice to see you, Chris. And
yeah.
Even though I don't see you, nice to hear you.
Well, you've seen him before.
I'm still alive after that cold I had the last
Oh, I know.
time.
I thought you were on death's door last time we spoke to you. You were just about ready to collapse.
It was so bad.
I know. But you know something I have to say? You were the one that made the decision to soldier on, so you did.
Well, what happened was it got worse while I was on the air.
I know.
I think what happened, I started around Thanksgiving. And it was a really wicked one, but I'm now back in my old self, so I'm ready to go.
You weathered the storm. So anyway,
I did.
We were talking about, I've seen a lot of your posts on Facebook. I always enjoy them. By the way, Michael Lutin's website is Michael Lutin, and last name is Lutin.com, michaellutin.com, one long string of words. I encourage you to go on there and see his website. He's got a great little private club where you'll get interesting tidbits that are custom made for you, I hope. And it's a great website. He has a newsletter. He also does a lot of stuff on Facebook. It's worth following him wherever you can. He's a remarkable guy. He's been around for a long time, and he's one of the most admired astrologers around. And we were talking the other day about the influence of the nodes in currently, with their nodes are currently in Capricorn and Cancer, and they are butting up against Saturn, which is going retrograde, and Pluto going retrograde as well. So, when we look at that, Michael, how does that sort of play out in your mind? I have an idea of what it looks like to me in my own personal life and to my own purview of the world. But what do you think that really bodes for us? Is this a time of enormous upset and a new direction that we're striking out for?
Well, that's a good way of putting it. But the planets also have nodes. We're talking about the lunar nodes in
Yes.
Cancer Capricorn. But right now, at the same time, Saturn and Pluto are both on their own south nodes.
Oh, yeah.
Planets have nodes as well as the moon does.
Mm-hmm.
So it's especially dangerous for opening gates to dark forces. I hate to say it, but it's the truth. Because the Saturn and Pluto have now sunk into the south. They've crossed the ecliptic, and they're both. The last time that Pluto crossed a node was when it crossed its north node in 1930.
Oh boy!
Around in the 30s, yeah. So it's always a political change. So the lunar nodes just happen to be there also right now. But the bigger thing is not just the lunar nodes. The bigger thing is the fact that Pluto and Saturn are meeting below the line of the
ecliptic.
Of the ecliptic. And so what it's like there are secret meetings going on in the back room. That's what that looks like.
And is this a
And
dredging?
every month,
Is this a dredging up of old ideas coming to light again, or are these hidden secrets being uncovered?
well, there's that also. Yes, of course. But yes, of course, there's no but about it. That's one of the things that's happening. But what it is going on is that there are secret meetings going on that we do not even know who is on whose side. There's such a chaotic change. There is no such thing as Republican or Democrat anymore. There's so much running between the aisles and so much backroom politics and so much manipulation because the people who are in charge or who used to be in charge of things realize they're very aware that the whole system is falling apart.
Right.
And there's a major move to maintain control and order in a moment of tremendous chaos and crisis. So nobody really knows who's on whose side, and the blame is shifting from one person to the other, to the other, to the other, and it's not a question of who's at fault. It's a question of the time has come, and the systems are collapsing in front of our eyes.
Right. It's a necessary stage, don't you think, though? I mean, it's a necessary part of... Yeah, of course. Right. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I can't be blasé about it because the world is falling apart, and I can't say I told you so. I mean, we all knew that as astrologers that this was coming. It's just that when it really happens, it's scary.
Well, it is when you see these things that you long held and that you long trusted are now beginning to collapse, and you're not the foundations that we once depended upon are not solid anymore.
And there's two aspects to it, Chris. There's the part that everybody is sharing this response to the chaos, trying to hold together what they particularly and personally have, while they are sharing with everyone the collective anxiety, which is really a death anxiety, is having things taken away from you. Pluto in Capricorn is historically has historically demonstrated that it's about the poaching of territory.
Yeah.
And the desire to grab territory and you own it. Jeff Bezos now wants to own the moon, so they're already off-world. They're already planning to try to take over different areas of the solar system because that's what Pluto in Capricorn does. Mm-hmm. It poaches territory. That's what it happened to the Native Americans. It's happened to the black people. It's happened to so many underdeveloped countries where people go in and they liberate them, but then what they really do is take away their property.
Right.
And that's what's going on in the world. There's a greed that has taken over and a dark force of control.
Yeah, it's pretty evident. We can see it in so many different countries around the world. We can see it in Venezuela where they're collapsing. We can see long-held structures in countries in Europe that we thought would always remain liberalized are now turning to become more conservative. We see a lot of turmoil.
Well, conservative is the way to save things from falling apart. That's why people are getting conservative. Mm-hmm. But it's happening everywhere. It's happening everywhere, and we don't know if it's really collapsing or people are coming in and making it collapse so that they can liberate it. That's historically what happens. Well, we're in a worldwide crisis, and everybody shares the collective anxiety about what's going to happen. Are we going to be overrun by floods? Are we going to have? What about the economy? Is the stock market going to fail? What's going to happen with the environment? There are so many factors that people share, that we're all sharing the anxiety about, but underneath it all, Chris, each person has his or her own share of death anxiety that he or she is living out.
Right.
So that you have the collective national, international, and intergalactic anxiety, and on top of that, everybody has a personal anxiety. And it's really stems from original death anxiety. Everybody has this now, but according to their own little story.
Right.
Whether you have an infected hangnail or you're going to hospice, everybody has something because they know an important ending is coming.
Right. Exactly.
They know it,
mm-hmm.
And that is the scariest part for most people.
I believe it's scary. I think it's scary. I do believe that it's scary, but I also hold faith that I think it's a dark era that we have to proceed through in order to get. It's almost like looking for the light at the end of the tunnel. We are maybe in the tunnel right now, but I do believe at the other side of this juncture, we will come out stronger, better, happier, and a more stable place. That is my ultimate belief.
Well, you're an optimist, and I think that's fine. But I was just having this discussion slash argument with somebody the other day who's a very, very devout Tibetan Buddhist, and he follows the work very, very strongly. And I had brought something up on my site about the people being, being now affected by death anxiety. And he said, "Oh, it's just a lesson, and it's a stage in our growth and evolution, and we have to open up to it." And I agree with it. Of course, that's true. But you can't tell that to someone who's shivering in fear or grief. You can't tell them what a lesson it is. And he was saying, yes, you can, because they hear what they can hear. And I think, no, I think you have to get people, first of all, to trust you and to feel safe. And once they trust you and feel safe, then you can illuminate their particular anxiety. But I just think that pontificating people right away comes off as very empty to them. They have to be educated into that sort of thinking.
Yeah, that's it. That's where the hard work comes in. Many people don't want to go down that educational path, but I try to impress that onto my clients and to the people I speak with all the time about the importance of the deconstruction. The deconstruction, sort of the undoing of this particular portion of your life, and it's different for all of us, or most of it's all different for us. We all have our own stories, as you mentioned. It's going to be in one of the 12 areas of your life, though. But the undoing that's happening is a necessary purging cleanse. It's like lancing a boil. You got to get rid of the pus inside the boil. I'm sorry, that's an unpleasant visual, but you have to do that to order to get rid of the old, the past, the diseases, or the destruction, the decay that's happening.
But
and,
I think
and move
you
on.
have to be empathic. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and move on. No, I think you're empathic in what way?
I think you have to be empathic to where the person is. For example, somebody who just said, "My father died last December. My mother just discovered cancer."
Right.
Let's say it's a Libra person. You can't. That's where the thing is for Libras in the fourth house family. You can't say, "Oh, that's just Pluto, and you're having the Saturn Pluto conjunction in your fourth house." Explaining it through astrology is not empathic. It's not empathic. Even if you, as the astrologer, recognize that this is the time for the family to change, you can't just throw astrology at somebody who's in a state of grief or worry.
I agree, and that is, you have to find a person who's willing to be taught that to begin with. It's sort of that old lesson when the student is ready when the teacher arrives, or however that old phrase goes. It's more about. There's a basic, you may have read this book years ago, Road Less Traveled by M. Scott Peck, but the very first sentence in that book is, "Life is difficult, period." And it's a fantastic book. I encourage everyone to read it. It's called The Road Less Traveled by a brilliant psychologist named M. Scott Peck. You can find it on Amazon. But anyway, life is difficult.
That was a wonderful book. That was a wonderful book. And that was also echoed by one of the greatest philosophers in the world, and that was Rosanna Dana. And she said, similar to what Scott Peck said, she said, "It's always something."
It's always something.
It's always something.
And it's true, though. So we make this premise that life is difficult, as opposed to thinking that life is a bed of roses. So we know that life is difficult. So with that as a premise, setting the stage, and now we say, okay, we know life's difficult. The poop's going to hit the ventilator. What do we do now? We look and we find out where this is happening. And if we're astute enough and learned enough and aware enough, we can see where it's happening in our own personal lives. And then we apply. We open up to the change, and we let the river take us. We don't fight it, is what I would suggest. I said, we don't fight this change. Give into it. Let the river take you. Do what has to be done. Sell your house, whatever you got to do. Break up with your wife, leave your job, wherever it is in your life, and start anew. That's not easy to do. I will grant you that. And it's very difficult for many people, and empathy is a good word.
Especially something of this magnitude. My goal is not to prove astrology to anybody. My goal in my work, in my interpersonal work with one-on-one, is to relieve the people's suffering. That's my number one goal, because life is hard and people suffer.
So how do you do that?
I've developed a method of reading horoscopes. It's since the 1960s, really, when I started, and that it involves a method of communication that is so profound that it allows people to open up on their own when they're ready. And I've developed a method for listening to when I hear that's ready.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't blast people with it, and that's why, writing a column for magazines, which I used to do when there were magazines.
Right.
I try now to be more humorous when I say things online, and I say things that are true, and I would never do anything that I didn't think wasn't authentic. But I try to get people to, most of the time, laugh at the stuff first,
Mm-hmm.
and then to recognize that sometimes I mean business. I'm just about to put up my June message, and I'm working on it now. And it's really about the fact that we're having a new moon on the 3rd of June, I think.
Yep.
And it's in a quincunx, it's in a T-square, crazy Neptune T-square, where it's like finding your keys in the rubble after a tornado. That's one thing. And the other thing is the Saturn Pluto, which we're talking about. And that's at 150 degrees away from the Gemini. And that is really being aware of the death anxiety that everybody has, just like it's something out of the corner of your eye,
Right.
like somebody's sitting in the room, but you can't quite. Every time you move your head, the image moves also. And what it is recognizing that we all have this collective anxiety. Everybody's talking about what's going on in Washington and what's going on in the world. That's a collective anxiety. Some people even think it has to do with alien beings from another dimension. But whatever it is your threat is, everybody has a dread and a threat.
Right.
And the thing is that, yes, that's one of the things that is going on. And yes, it's time for this to happen because it's happening. But it's not just astrology. We can't just say, well, it's Saturn Pluto in your 5th house, and therefore you're having. It doesn't make sense to people.
No.
But as you just said a few minutes ago, people have it somewhere in their own charts, and they're all dealing with the fact that what it is what do you call it? Force majeure. It's
Right. Yeah.
It's an enforced change. It's not like, I think I'd like to live in Atlantic City. It isn't anything like that. It's something that comes upon you, and that is really what you are charged to do.
Right.
You make your own plans, and then Pluto says, oops, you forgot this.
Mm-hmm.
And you have a whole thing that becomes a major preoccupation that you don't want to deal with. And because it's with Saturn, your anxiety decreases when you are doing something that you don't want to do. That's the key to it, because the Saturn Pluto is something you don't want to deal with. But the minute you start dealing with the thing you don't want to deal with, your anxiety drops.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going through this myself. I have Saturn and Pluto going through my 4th house, and I'm in the process of downsizing my house and getting ready to sell it. So this is I've seen this coming for quite some time, and I do admit with you, I do agree with you that when I'm up in my attic and I'm packing up boxes of books to get rid of them and hauling out old clothes and stuff like that and throwing away things and I actually feel better when I do that because I know I'm making progress. I've sort of jumped into the stream and I'm letting the stream take me. I don't want to do this at my core, but I know it has to happen, so I'm going to do it. I'm going to give into it and let the stream carry me. And it is much easier by giving in than it is by trying to stop it or resist.
I think that is exactly the secret. When the anxiety level drops when you're doing the thing you don't really want to do.
Yeah, I think
because
being
that's
physical.
What the Saturn Pluto is.
Being physical, being active, and then sort of turning into it, facing it, leaning into the pain, the hardship, the discomfort that you may be going through, and realize that it's temporary. I think that's what's most important. Granted, it's a long-term temporary, maybe 2 or 3 years before you get out of it.
That's the whole secret. The whole secret behind it is what you just said. It's understanding that everything is temporary. Mm. Everything that you hold on to is temporary. It's not going to last.
No, it's not. And the acceptance of that is critical to the forward progress of anyone, I would say. That once you accept that this is a foregone conclusion, you cannot escape this, I think taking that medicine, the spoonful of sugar, goes down much easier with the medicine that way. I think it's just it's a way of saying, okay, it's a matter of giving in. It's not resignation, but it is acknowledgement of a difficult part of your life, a portion of your life that is having difficulty that requires intervention, and you're the only person that can intervene in this case. It's kind of like growing up, you know. It's like it's a major Saturn return in some ways. It's Saturn return on steroids because you got Pluto along for the ride.
Saturn and Pluto, right? There's grief involved.
Yeah, there is. There's loss.
You can't minimize it. There's grief involved in saying goodbye.
Yeah,
Period.
I know.
And the fact is that people used to make fun of it. Oh, you have empty nest syndrome. You won't grow up. It is about growing up. It is about recognizing the impermanence of all things. But these are the things that I work on. I'm personally working on accepting the impermanence of all things. So I can't really just foist it on somebody who's going through something and they're not familiar with that idea.
No.
Somebody like you yourself, you built a beautiful house, you raised your family in it, it's a gorgeous house, it's in the country, you're happy, and you find now that you don't need it.
That's right.
And it's hard to recognize that you don't need it.
Well, it's something that you do. You say it's all you've got attachment to it. It's the attachment of more than anything else. The attachment to things, which is one of the basic premises of Buddhism. You can't be attached to things, and we are all attached to things. We're attached to friends, family, jobs.
Of course.
Yeah.
That's whoever thought up life had one hell of a sense of humor, because you can't know what life is unless you love someone more than you love yourself. You never learn to love you never learn to live unless you can love someone more than yourself.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
And yet, at the same time, one or the other of you has to die first.
Yeah, I know. It really is incredible. I mean, it just is incredible. You have to go through that. And I think that's part of the paradox of life. But I think it's the people who are unwilling to accept that, sort of turn a blind eye from it, as if they have the will to overcome this. You can overcome it.
Well, we're taught that, Chris. We're in the West. We're taught to watch the television, take the medication they advertise on television, buy the car that they love, and laugh at the sitcoms that are not funny, and forget everything else, but to buy more, just like in the book said. 1984, buy more now. And it was in THX 1138 also, buy more now. Are you there?
Yeah.
Okay. I thought we got cut off.
No. Yeah, no, that is very important. I mean, and those are all valid, that, the idea. So we have this, and so these are this distraction methods. And I think that what bothers me most is that people are not aware enough of what we're going through. They may see it on the national stage, and they think that the country's going to hell in a handbasket, but they don't realize that it's also happening to them on a personal level. That's why I think they don't quite understand that. If you were to ask anybody, sit them down and say, where are you having trouble in your life, you could probably figure that out now, because it probably is pretty intense to them.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, it's just...
For sure. The thing is that we in the East, we in the West, I shouldn't say East, we in the West have been completely programmed to be happier by being able to buy something we want,
it's just
thinking that whatever we want is going to satisfy us. But the verb to want in French and in other language means to be lacking. So once you get something that you want, you can't want it anymore because you have it.
Right.
And so that's why we're never happy with anything eventually we bought, because we need to buy more. And it's a way of life. Capitalism is a way of life. And what it got in America, it got so far to the other extreme.
Yeah.
That now we that's the only thing that makes us feel better, is to go shopping.
Retail's therapy, yeah.
And it's the end. We're at the end of that road. We're at the end of the road, and I think of Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. They're very lucky people, or who knows what, but they're not in the masses are struggling to survive in a time that's all about Capricorn.
I know.
And it's about what you have and what you've been able to take away from others. And unless you're an evolved Capricorn, and then you understand what equality is about for other people and needs. But the lowest part of Capricorn is And when a planet enters a Capricorn, or when a planet enters any sign, it has to learn how to manifest that sign. Mm-hmm. So Pluto is now just beginning to manifest some higher vibes of the sign, and that's when Capricorn can be a great leader of great wisdom.
Yeah, they are. Well, they are leaders.
But in the beginning, it's about control. That's what happened in 1930.
Mm-hmm.
It's about fear and control. That's the lowest part of Capricorn. The highest part of Capricorn is being able to be a spokesperson for what is equitable and true and fair and earned out of hard work and discipline. That's what Capricorn's supposed to be.
Yeah,
but what has happened in our government, that's not what happened, and people are blaming Trump for everything. And the guy's only been there for 2 years, and he's everybody's bad toe is Trump's fault. He's a perfect example of what America has come to. That's why he won that election, whether he faked it or not. The fact is, it's perfect for this to happen.
It's
perfect for happening, and we're so accustomed to finding a person to blame for everything. We don't realize, we say, well, get rid of Trump, everything is be all right. He's got his finger in the dike. When they get rid of him, they're going to see what the deluge is all about, and what Pluto in Aquarius is, and what the revolution, the world revolution, the solar system revolution. What's really going on is not talked about. People are only talking about things that are this distraction. The real thing is still hidden, because that's the Saturn Pluto. It's beneath the ecliptic. It's all going on in the dark, and we are not privy to who's doing the meeting and who's doing negotiating and we do not know anything about what's really happening.
It really is. It's classic astrology, if you think about it, which is why astrology is so fascinating to all of us, to me especially, and to you, I'm sure.
Isn't it?
It's just amazing because we see this. We see he is the ideal perfect for the person, for the time and place, because he does represent all that's wrong with America. So he brings it up, throws it in our face, and we are either repulsed by it or encouraged by it. And how we respond to that is how we then make our course going forward. And we think
he got up on and knocked the monopoly board right off the table.
He sure did.
And so now we don't know who owns the hotels, who owns the railroads. And he's shaking up every alliance that there was. He's shaking up,
and it's no small. It's no small irony that the things he's busting. He is the great builder. That's how he claims to be, and yet things are falling down all around him. So it's just incredible. And just the simple fact they can't get an infrastructure bill passed. There's the infrastructure we're talking about. That's the roots, the nuts and bolts, the trains, the bridges, the airports.
But we don't know who is pulling the strings.
No, we don't.
Not at all.
No.
Sometimes I think that. Well, I'm not going to say that. I just think that we don't know who's pulling the strings, and the fact that these Saturn-Pluto conjunctions with the Moon, once a month now, are occultations.
Right.
It shows that the Moon is obscuring them, and they're being obscured from the public. So that there are very important negotiations and meetings going on by people who are in absolute power, whose names we don't know or could pronounce. But it's really going on right, not in front of our eyes, but behind our heads.
That's right. It's a classic situation of the Wizard of Oz pulling the strings, and we don't know what's going on behind that curtain. And there's no Toto in our life right now pulling aside that curtain. We thought we had a Toto, but we have no Toto right now. So we thought Mueller was going to be Toto and pull aside the curtain and show us the professor behind there operating things, but that didn't happen.
No, it's way bigger than that.
Yeah. We are talking today with Michael Lutin, the one and only Michael Lutin out of New York City. His website is michaellutin.com. Lutin is his last name, michaellutin.com. I encourage you to go to his website and check out his offerings. He has a private club, which is really cool to belong to. It's called Mikey's Private Club. And you can also book a session with him there and see what else he's done as far as his website and follow him on Facebook as well. We'll take a quick break right here. We'll be back in about 2.5 minutes. We'll continue our discussion about what we're going through, what we're seeing, and how maybe to best cope with it. So we'll be back in about 2.5 minutes. So hang in there.
What is your destiny? Where are you going? What is your real purpose? Do you know? Do you want to know? Of course you do. It's your duty to yourself. We are all here for a reason, and we all have great potential. Discover all of this and more with a professional astrology reading. My name is Chris Flisher, and I can help you. Discover your strengths and work on your weaknesses, and live your life to its fullest capacity. Based on your birthday, birthplace, and birth time, an authentic astrology reading will allow you to live your life to the fullest and reveal your true purpose. Only real astrology can give you real information. It is your destiny, and it is your path. Write me at chris@chrisflisher.com and book a reading today, or call me at 978-393-1036. That's 978-393-1036. www.chrisflisher.com.
Astrology is the science of spirit, and it can serve as an invaluable aid in making the difficult choices in life and seeking truth in all the directions we choose. It holds the potential to allow each of us to evolve to our highest potential. It is the logic of the universe, the code of existence, and the pathway to true wisdom. It is our duty to draw from it the instructions for our lives and to live them to our fullest potential. As the great wheel turns, we are best prepared when we are best informed.
As the world shrinks and our barriers come down, diverse cultures are striving for harmony, balance, and peace. To ease the transition, we need to expand with color, light, and tolerance. Now, you can become a global citizen and embrace the color and clear spirit with the divine artwork of the mandala. Mandalas are a timeless artistic offering for creating unity, harmony, and peace. My name is Chris Flisher, and I've spent years creating mandalas, and they are now available online at www.turningofthewheel.com. Come and experience the world of color, form, and function with t-shirts, coffee mugs, note cards, and limited edition prints. These vibrant, lively paintings and products express optimism, oneness, and spiritual balance for all who use them. www.turningofthewheel.com. That's www.turningofthewheel.com. And enter a world of possibility and color.
Okay, welcome back to Turning of the Wheel. Today my guest is Michael Lutin, the one and only, out of New York City. MichaelLutin.com is his website. Lutin is how you spell his last name. He's on Facebook. You can follow him there. And we were having this fascinating discussion. I've had this discussion many times with many different astrologers. Not this particular subject per se, but about the whole coming of the 2020 elections, about the Saturn, Pluto, Jupiter conjunction that's coming up, and what it looks like to all of us. And we've been talking about this for 10, 15 years, so this is not news to those of us who study astrology, but to see it unfold before our eyes on the newspapers and across the screens in real time, just as we thought it would happen, is, I think, remarkable. And it gives me goosebumps as a person who studies astrology, because I just say, wow, you can't get any better proof that this stuff works than this, because we're living right through this hell right now. We're in the middle of an incredible shitstorm. And it's supposed to be this way, people, and there's nothing wrong with that. So Michael is trying to help us get through this by finding ways that encourage us to embrace this, as opposed to trying to force it back and then going away. We can't change this tide. We can't stop this river. It's in motion.
Death anxiety plagues us all.
And when you say death anxiety, I mean, we're all going to die. We all know that. What is it about the death anxiety in particular that you're talking? You think you're talking about fear of death?
Because it's behind every single person alive lives to avoid death anxiety, except people who are completely embracing death as as part of their philosophy and religion. But the denial of death is really the basis of much of Western society. And we are now facing the fact that, well, nuclear, anything could happen. The environment is so bad. The water is so bad. So, and that's all on the news. They're telling people it's going to be uninhabitable. It's going to be uninhabitable. So we're being told that there is a serious crisis in society and human life. I will tell you, a good little thing happened yesterday. 20,000 bees were found, and they were keeping people from walking down the street in Queens. And they did remove the bees. It's a good sign to even say that we have bees.
It's true.
Because when they said, oh yeah, it was good. It was good news. So that's what I was just about to say, is that there is death anxiety for every single person, but some people have a different kind of philosophy about change and going through enforced transformations if they have to. I'm going to sneeze. Hold on.
Okay.
Excuse me. I'm sorry.
That's all right. At least you're not coughing today. At least you're not coughing, so we can at least hear you. But
happen.
Yeah. But the thing about the death anxiety, I mean, we all know that death is going to happen, right? We all know death is going to happen.
Right. The denial of death is behind so much of what we do. Don't lose your job. Don't lose your job. Don't lose that relationship. Don't lose that relationship. Don't move. Don't change your house. So the fear of the unknown,
right,
is really at the base of it. The fear of the unknown is really about death anxiety. What happens if I lose my job? Then I won't have any money. Then I won't have any place. What will happen? I'll starve to death and I'll die. Everything that we have to give up or everything that we have to change triggers our ultimate unconscious death anxiety. Mm-hmm. But it comes down to people's philosophies. Some people relate to change much better than others. Some people aren't. And some people go through crisis. My Aries friend, we were sitting around one night saying to her, well, look what happened to you back in 72. And she said, what? We said, in 72? She said, what? We said, you had 4th stage cancer. She said, oh yeah, right. Now she's an Aries. Mm-hmm. Now, Aries people can throw that off. You know, a Scorpio would put the tumor on the mantelpiece for years. Some people are able to go through change and leave it behind and don't hang on to it. Mm-hmm. Water signs, for example, hang on to something more than somebody a fire sign. She's an Aries. Yeah. That she'd had 4th stage cancer. And she's now a full professor at a university. And so that the ability to go through things, to go through change, is fundamentally your philosophy of life. Is this a period of change or is this the end of the road? A lot of the people are seeing this as the end of the road. Right. And I'm saying to my clients, well, I'm seeing you have progressions next year. I mean, you have progressions in 2021. I'm saying you see this as the end of a corridor. No, it's the end of the road. I see it at the end of a corridor. I can see to the right and to the left because I'm an astrologer, so I can see more aspects. You're seeing this as the end of your road. Right. A lot of people do, and that is not abnormal. That's not sick. That's not crazy. A lot of people are saying they don't know what the hell is going to happen to them now, and the old securities are gone. Mm-hmm.
And that's really the tearing down. Yeah. But how many times have you? How many times have you had clients? I have had clients who I've said, you may be unhappy with your job. You may be unhappy with your relationship. You may be unhappy in many areas of your life, and yet you're afraid to move because you know that what's familiar is comforting. And so you just stay where you are because you say, I'll put up with the damn wife or the husband for however I have to because I know they're always going to be there at the end of the day and they're always going to be a hot dinner, a table, and whatever. And so you stick it out even though you're genuinely unhappy at your core. What you don't know is if you had left that job or left that relationship, what is on the other side? And it's the fear of what's on the other side and not knowing what it is the real conundrum. Because what's on the other side could be fabulous. It could be the best thing that ever happened to you if you left that.
Do you see why that's the same as death anxiety?
Oh, I do. But that's probably me being an optimist and saying...
No, that's what death anxiety is. The fact is that we don't know what happens after we die.
Right.
We don't know what that is.
Well, it may be fantastic.
The Matrix and all this stuff, there's so many theories of life and philosophy.
Oh, I know.
Well, we don't know what it is. It's just the ability to have faith in the future And you can only have faith in the future if you're diligently pursuing the present. If your livelihood is proper, and if your attitude is proper, and if your understanding is proper, and if you have right attitude toward life,
And actions.
you don't have to be afraid of what's happening because you've got the courage and the tools right in there. But you have to live much more aware of yourself and how you deal with people, how you communicate with people, how people communicate with you. The more that you are able to do that in the present, the less you have to worry about the future.
That's right.
And so 2020 is going to, Chris, not only that, the Jupiter is on its south node also next year.
Mm-hmm. So that means that
Jupiter
whatever
is
change is going to happen, it's going to be amplified.
Oh, it's going to be amplified, but it's certainly between January and March. It really is.
Mm-hmm.
It really is, and therefore it is scary that the whole Earth, and even down to the little bugs and beetles, on whatever level they are surviving, everybody feels that something big is going to happen.
Right. We see
Everybody.
that. We see that, and we see that in the newspaper. We see that in way all of our relations with our foreign countries have taken place. We've seen huge institutions being torn down. Protocols.
It would be wonderful if people joined together, but they don't.
No.
I was sent a book by NASA. I didn't even ask for this book. I was sent a book called Archaeology, Anthropology, and Interstellar Communication. I downloaded it. I think anybody could get it, but I got this thing from NASA, and I read this a series of articles by physicists and scientists about the search for extraterrestrial life. And they said that if there were alien intelligences, which I of course believe there are, but they said if there were such a thing, they could not really make themselves publicly known until the world was united, because there would be too much competition to curry favor with the various future, advanced civilizations.
Interesting.
So what we have globalists and we have individualists. Globalists are a bunch of nations that want to create a world. Now, I don't think that it's really the world that guy in the book was talking about. I think that there are many globalists that are really creating a more multinational corporation of the world. But
right. That's the wrong direction,
Some people don't believe that. Some people believe that globalism is really a way for the world to join in equality and love for their brother and sister, that will make it possible for us to belong to the Galactic Club.
I'm reading. It's interesting.
We're on the cusp of the Galactic Club right now.
Right. The idea that the collective has to get together in some way, there needs to be a common denominator that brings that collective together.
Trump, as crazy as he is, doesn't believe that it's all a humanitarian thing that they're doing at all. And he's not in the club, and he doesn't want to be, and neither does Putin. So for some reason, there is a faction that has nothing to do with Democrats or Republicans. That's a dead issue now. Somehow there is a connection between the individualists and the collectivists. And the globalists and the collectivists have one agenda, which we don't know, and the individualists don't know. Everybody's trying to gather some sort of power, which is ridiculous because there's a greater sense of forces and powers that are now joining in to control the Earth.
Right.
That's one of the things I believe, and that's one of the things I don't say too publicly, but that is what I think is happening. There is another intelligence involved here.
I think that's possible. Yeah, I think that's highly likely as well. And we're getting closer to that. I mean, you can see what happened in the New York Times this week. They've got film footage of an extraterrestrial. But I always thought when I was younger that the only way that there would be
wait a minute. It was a Navy a flying saucer. They didn't really see a person.
Oh no, I don't mean that. I mean, no, they saw a flying saucer. Yeah, UFO. Well, that indicates to me that's along the same conversation. But I always thought that there had to be a common. Unfortunately, for us to become collective, there needs to be a common purpose that we share equally across the globe and across all cultures.
Well, that could be the government creating enemies and demonizing various people to keep the people under control. First it's the Nazis, then it's this group, then it's that group. Even it's some people believe that the government is planning a fake UFO invasion to because that's the last group that we could possibly demonize, is creatures from another world or another dimension.
Well,
so some people believe that that's going to be the next thing that the government tries to foist on people.
Well, they're close to it.
I just tell you, I have my high school friend and her husband. They live in San Francisco, so I spoke to them, recently. I said, "What are you guys doing?" She said, "We just came back from a trip." I said, "Where did you go?" She said, "Iran." I said, "What?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "How'd you go to Iran? Are you people CIA or something?" She said, "No, we called San Francisco University, Berkeley, and she said they were scheduling a trip of students to Iran." I said, "And they let you go?" She said, "We had a fantastic time. Their people were crowding us in the streets. They were so happy." I said, were they stopped?" She said, "Not at all. Nobody was stopped." She said, there nobody. We didn't even have a guide. She said, "We went on our own." And she said, "What we're told about different places is to scare us away from them." I don't know. She wasn't making that up. I'm sure it happened. Maybe it was an isolated case. But the fact that the governments the government is able to survive based on the obedience of the people beneath them. Mm-hmm. And then once obedience breaks down, the system breaks down. And that's what's happening in a revolution. This is a world revolution beginning, and it's going to be ruled by Uranus, and it will not be ruled by Saturn, no matter what the ancient astrologers say.
Yeah, and the fact that it's Uranus, and Uranus is in Taurus now, it would indicate a very foundational, earthbound kind of reorganization that was, sort of goes to the core of like large institutions, such as we see with the courts. It also goes to, anything that's big and foundational and concrete and earthbound in some way.
And I think also that the fact that other planets have been discovered, like Sedna and Eris and Haumea and Makemake, the fact that we have other planets now, we don't know what they mean because their orbits are 11,000 years or something, 600 years. So we don't have a meaning. But the minute something is discovered beyond Pluto, society must evolve to meet it, and that means that we have to find out what's behind Pluto, what's beyond Pluto, and it is the civilizations that live and lived in our end of the galaxy, and we have to awaken to that, and it's going to destroy a lot of the philosophies and religions that we had. It's going to be destroy not so much the need to have faith, but it's going to certainly destroy the organized systems that have kept people obedient for years, because other things are going to be happening. I heard an interview of two priests recently, and one said it was a TV interview, and the reporter said to the old geezer priest, "Do you think that do you think we have been visited by other planets, by other civilizations?" And the old priest said, "Of course not, because they can't exist, because God created the world in 6 days." He said, "Well, if that's happened," he said, "it can happen because they couldn't if they don't exist." And so the reporter said, "Well, let me just ask you this: if they did exist, would they have to be saved by Christ?" And the priest said, "Of course they would, but they can't because they don't exist." And the next priest was 30 years old. This guy was a geezer. He said to the younger priest, "Do you believe we've ever been visited by other intelligences?" And the young priest said, "Every time I'm in out west, every time I'm in New Mexico, I always pray I'll see a UFO. I never have." And he said to the young priest, "Well, do you think that we have been visited?" He said, "Of course." Right. And he said, "Well, do you think that they would have to be saved by Christ?" And the young priest said, "How do we know they didn't save Christ?" That's a Catholic priest saying that. So that there's young people always have the ideas that old people feel scared of, to the world is coming to an end.
Right.
But that's where the happiness and joy always comes from young people, because young people know they're never going to die.
Well, yeah,
and they do not
that's
have,
true. Yeah.
They don't have the death anxiety that old people have.
No, they're not. They've got a lot more mileage in the car to come. But the idea that when it comes to the argument about astrology as a general practice, you could say, well, who put the if you're a Christian and you believe that God created everything and put the planets into place, there's perfect life. Well, that's the secret. That's maybe aliens were made by God, and so who cares if they come down? I mean, I'm not. Why couldn't the old priest look at it that way? He's very narrow in his view, and he's sort of brainwashed, I guess, in some way, to that view. But
because the world is always open to young people. Young people are going to. They don't have the anxiety unless there was a traumatic birth. If you had a traumatic birth, then of course you have death anxiety. But if you had a natural normal birth, your death anxiety is much less. And therefore, when I think of the things that I did when I was a kid in school and college, they were so dangerous. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, you could do dangerous things then because nothing's going to happen to you. But since I was run over by that car a year ago, ever since I was run over by that taxi, I think, oh my God, I could get run over. I never thought of that.
Right. It does take a brush with danger to make you awaken you, and that does heighten your authority. But why do you think that?
And that's where we all are. We are now facing danger, every one of us.
Mm-hmm. But why do you think that we are so susceptible to this fear? I mean, I know it's an instinctive fear. It's a natural fear. All animals fear death as well. And yet it is part of life. It's inevitable. It can be seen as a birth of sorts because it's just the other end of the circle.
Right. But whoever did it made us want to keep on living.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's probably that's an instinct, yeah.
And also, life is sensations.
Yeah.
The sweetness of chocolate.
Yeah.
The beauty of someone's a beautiful young body.
Yeah, I know.
We are trapped by our desire for sensations. That's what caused the incarnation in the first place. Mm-hmm. And no matter how life is crappy, no matter how miserable you are, you get that one little taste of sweetness, and you're happy all over again.
Yeah.
We are creatures of sensation, and that's why we want to keep living.
And that sort of speaks to the whole basic Buddhist approach of to live a right mind, live without desire. And it's counterintuitive to our instincts. But if you can do it and master it, then you've really got something going for you.
Exactly. But, how many of us, and that's what we go back to the original thing. I don't think you can foist that kind of a conversation. I've been studying it for many, many years, but I would never foist it on somebody else because unless I was certain that they were interested in that side of life. Because if somebody is grieving, they just had a severe loss, you can't minimize it by saying life is impermanent. Because that doesn't allay their grief.
No,
I mean, eventually that's what the discussion has to be about. But if somebody is just facing a separation, or have a marriage or anything, you have to be where that person is.
Yeah, I get that, and it seems counterintuitive in some ways that we are born with these monkey minds that clog our heads with these fears and anxieties. When we know it's going to happen eventually. I guess what we really want to know is how it's going to happen. That's the big question.
Right.
We're all wondering,
right.
Well, is today my last day? The other day I was in the backyard and I started to choke on something. And the thought ran through my head. I said, is this the end? Is this something? Am I going now? And I was fine, of course. I just had to get something stuck in
Perfect.
Perfect. But I thought,
Perfect.
Is this my day?
Perfect.
Is this my day?
Perfect. I know. I got a pimple on my forehead last night. And I said, oh, what the hell is this now?
Yeah.
The thing is that everything that appears is a threat to security. And that's where we are, is to being able to have faith, not only in the present, but because we've lived properly and the best we could in the present, we don't have to be afraid of the future.
Right.
And that's the best thing I can tell people on this, because you can think up a million scary scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
A million things could happen between now and 2020. but I'm
Between
doing
now
the
and
best
tomorrow
that
morning.
I can for myself and my people. I'm
Yeah.
doing the best I can. So what else can I do?
No, I just think that I think that the idea of being forewarned is being forearmed. If you know that something's happening in your life and you can't prevent it, so then you give into it and you sort of work with it as opposed to opposing it. That's the secret. That's the
Right,
That's the
right,
nugget.
you're
That's the
very
nugget
true.
we want people to take away.
But some people believe that being forewarned is to be nervous.
Well, I suppose. I mean,
They just rather face it when it happens.
it's like being on the roller coaster. Okay, you're going up the roller coaster. You're climbing up the big hill. You know that downhill is going to come soon, and you're like, "Oh my God, what am I?" But you got yourself on there, so you are forewarned.
That's right.
So you hang on to the guardrails. and
Because, Chris, it's always something.
it's always something. There's no question about it. That's what Rosanna Dennis said. Rosanna Dennis.
Rosanna Dana has really captured the mystery of Eastern philosophy. And she really, really had.
And
It's always something.
it's always something. It's there for us all to see. But the idea that the Buddhists really are onto something, and in this, and I'm not going to
Aren't
harp.
they?
Yeah, because they do
And
have
that-
understanding.
You know what? It's no accident they live at the roof of the world.
Right. Exactly. Because
No accident.
they seem to have a much calmer approach to all of this. It's about fully living in the present. And living in the present is not an easy thing for us to do. It's almost impossible for most people. I mean, try meditating sometime. People have a terrible time doing it. They say, I can't meditate. My mind wanders. Well, you got to find a way to do it. It's in those moments that you gain more clarity and more comfort. As you mentioned earlier, once you live in the present and fully accept the present, then it's not that hard of a job to take. It's not that hard of a pill to swallow. It really comes down to
That's
that.
right.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting conundrum that we as a species are faced with this, and we have this built-in intelligence that gives us this this constant anxiety. I'm not sure monkeys or dogs have this. Dogs don't seem to be having much problem.
I think every living being has a kind of consciousness. And I think every living being that crawls, little ladybugs, anything, I think they know, if I can use the word know, they have a sense that living beings are on the brink of something. I think that's true. I believe that.
On the brink of something major.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting that we live through this time, so we could easily say that we were all brought to this earth at this time to experience this great change. And
That's correct.
and we are the agents of that change. And so therefore we could be seen as being, at a moment in time, we are like the people who fought World War II or went through the Depression. We're going through a period of time.
I think that's right, but I think it's bigger.
Yeah.
I think I think this is bigger. I think it's bigger because we've discovered not only Pluto, but we've discovered a lot of planets going around the sun at a huge distance and in huge orbits, and I think that we are now on the brink of something much bigger. Just as all the individuals their minds were blown when the outer planets were discovered.
I know. And that was when civilization came to a realization of the power and the emphasis and the symbolism of the planets that were discovered, and we embraced them. And we moved on.
First you had people who saw the sun and moon. That was all they could. That's what ruled them. And then they began to see the wandering planets in the sky. Every time a planet is discovered by human consciousness, then the evolution is taking place. And so I think we're on the brink of it, and it's very scary for a lot of people, and me included, and you included.
Right.
Scary thing.
Yeah, and I think that the way we can assuage those fears is by being fully active in, if you know something's going to change, and you engage that, and you accept that, and you step in to be an agent of that change will be far easier. That's why you're getting back to your point you made earlier about being active and embracing what this is. Keep moving, keep working on this, and you'll know that it's going to make the transition faster and easier for you.
That's right.
It's a critical piece, because without that, we're not part of the dialogue. Instead of it being imposed upon us, we become an active player in that game. We have a role and we have a choice as to how we can determine that outcome. If we know something's going to be torn down, we have an active role, an active choice we can make as to how that gets torn down. Does it get torn down? Let's just use the analogy of a house. Supposing you have to move a house, or you have to leave your house and move someplace else. You can either empty the attic out and get all the clothes to the Goodwill, or you can sit there and try to fight it. But if you enter into that and you say, okay, I know where I'm going to be going, I'm going to change this is where I'm going to go, and you begin to embrace
Well,
that.
last night, so many of those houses in Dayton
Yeah.
and in the Midwest, and there was one woman, she was walking around in circles. She because her house was like flattened. She was walking around in circles.
Wow. Yeah, she was stunned by it, did not quite know what to do. But the activity and
Yeah, you can't believe it's happening.
the nature is really showing us a lot. I think a lot of what we're seeing in the course of the natural events, whether it be a volcano, whether it be an earthquake, whether it be tornadoes, whether it be climate change. I mean, just the simple fact that earlier this week it was 85 degrees and this morning it was 45 degrees. That is a 40-degree difference within 2 days.
Well, you know what? I believe that's being manipulated by people. I don't believe the weather is natural.
Oh, really? You think?
I believe that there's been manipulation of the weather.
Interesting. I never heard that before. Huh. Well, I mean, I could see that, be man-made. People could be involved in this. I think that's possible. But
I believe that's the case. It's a whole other show.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. That's a very interesting comment. Well, we've run out of time here, Michael. I think we covered a lot of territory. I think the most important takeaway for people is to find out where this is in your chart. You can contact Michael himself at michaellutin.com or myself at chrisflisher.com. We can run your chart and we can tell you where Saturn and Pluto are sitting in your chart based on what we use for astrology and our tools. And then you'll be able to say, wow, okay, yeah, that's right. You're right. There is, I can feel this here. And then you can have a dialogue with yourself to sort of find a way to embrace it, lean into it, correct it, accept it, be fully present with it, and your time will be much easier as a result. So, Michael, thank you so much for coming on today. It's been great having you on as always. michaellutin.com.
Great to be here. Thank you so much.
Do you have anything new coming up in the over the coming months? Any webinars or talks you're giving anywhere?
Oh, I have a lot of things happening. Yeah,
Okay,
I have
good.
A lot of things. I have a class this week that's closed. I have a thing up in Lilydale in July 27th.
Is it all on your website?
An ESAR webinar. It's on my website.
Oh, good.
An ESAR webinar on the 21st, and I'm working on a bigger presentation called The American Spring. That will. It was originally going to be in October, but it's going to be later.
Great. That sounds fantastic. So we can find all that out from your website and by being on your newsletter. michaellutin.com, Lutin is his last name. And be sure to check out Mikey's private club. We don't know what goes on.
Thank you very much.
We don't know what goes on in the private club, but I think the only way to find out is to join. Who knows what goes on in that private club? All right, Michael. Take care, man. I'll talk to you soon. Be well.
Take it easy.
Be well. Take care.
You've been listening to Turning of the Wheel with your host, Chris Flisher. To schedule a reading with me or to order artwork, you may visit my website at www.turningofthewheel.com. That's www.turningofthewheel.com. Or you can call me at 978-393-1036. Thank you. And as always, be open to possibilities.